How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to the Sean Attwood channel with me, Ron Swanson, and of course, Jon Wedger. We are here bringing you crime theory and the case that we've been building. I know a lot of you have been following along with us. It is ever growing, and we will keep informing you and keep updating you with it all. We've got a few interesting shows that we're discussing and we'll have lined up for you for November. And Jon, take us through how you've been and since the last time we spoke, what has been going on.
Yeah, I mean, on social media, my popularity is sort of going back to um, its height of around 2018 to 2020, and that's really from the popularity of these videos that I've done with yourself and with Sean Atwood, and mainly in relation to these murders, the crime theories, and the Jimmy Savile stuff has become very, very on vogue at the moment. So my social media has gone absolutely crazy, and I've been contacted by many people that want me to look at unsolved cases, murder cases, and it's mad. And I've also had journalists contact me, mainstream media journalists,
Yeah.
and with this case tonight, um, also I've had to pass information onto the police.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
So
absolutely.
it and again been talking to a big radio journalist in Belfast, because this one tonight is a Northern Ireland um, murder case, and the similarities again. You're gonna fall off your chair with this one as well. It just doesn't seem to stop delivering what we're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
It's spooky. It really is weird. Just when I think that we can't have any more coincidences, bang,
Yeah.
they occur.
Well,
Bang, bang, bang.
take us away when you're ready.
Right. So we're going back to the 70s again. There seems to be a heyday for the missing children and murders of children in the 70s. We've had quite a few late 60s, early 70s. There must have been something in the air back then, and we're going to look at the tragic case of a missing 10-year-old boy. And again, I'm going to bring something else into the mix, um, with age, because in doing these videos, I do my these audio interviews. I do my research as well, and over the years that I've been looking into this stuff, I've made contacts. Some of them invaluable contacts, the really really good ones, and one of them is Corinne um, Hustabot, who's priceless when it comes to the mind of a child murderer.
Okay.
And another one, I'm not going to name this lady, but she is an author,
Okay.
and she's written books about Satanism, because she was a victim of intergenerational Satanism, and she's a wealth of knowledge on the dynamics of it and how it works, the structure of it, the
Yeah.
organization, the location, and ages are very important. And she said to me something. She said, "Jon, are we looking at 10 to 11-year-old children?" And I went, "Yeah." She said, "How did I know that?" I said, "I don't know." She said, "Well, I'm going to explain it." And she goes on about the purity of the children, and um, 10 to 11 is a very good age, because it's just before that they actually change physically and go into puberty. Um, Boys tend to go missing more, in her opinion, only because they are easier to coerce, because boys are always out and about. They're a bit more trusting, whereas girls aren't. Girls really aren't in the parks all the time at that age, climbing trees, up to mischief, on the streets, in gangs. It tends to be more of a boy thing, and boys are more inquisitive than girls when it comes to that. They prefer, the ritualistic murderers prefer the girls that are virgins before purity. And she said something, and she said, there's a process called stoning, and I'd heard this before. And she said, "You don't know what I mean, do you?" I said, "I do, but I've forgotten. It slipped my mind, but I have heard it."
Okay.
She said, "It's how they determine the like the puberty stage of a child." And
Okay.
it's I'm going to give a little bit of a trigger warning to this because this is perverse, but it's not going to get her kicked off.
Okay, no problem.
Right, but before a girl enters puberty, a year before she enters puberty, her nipples change and the glands alter, and it's like a small stone, as it were, appears behind the nipple, and it's noticeable by touch. That's why these guys will fondle and touch up these young girls. And one of the reasons why, and it sort of reminded me a bit of Jimmy Savile, what he would do, and he would touch them up and rub their. Now, if they feel the presence of these stones and they are virginal, which most girls of that age are, unless they're victims of incest and things like that and abuse. Most are going to be. That is going to be the ripe age, and this is the age where these demonic perverts want them. And
Yeah, that's
that's how.
shocking.
And with boys, it's more noticeable because their face changes as well as the downstairs region, so it's a bit easier to determine if a boy and the voice changes. If a boy is going through the hormonal change, with a girl, it's a bit different. So she said 10 to 11 is a prime age, and she said a lot of what you're looking to is it around that age. And I said yes, it is. It is. She was bang on, and she knows because she was a survivor of ritualistic abuse and now an author and a best-selling author
Okay.
of these things. But I will keep her name out of it. But it's no secret. But I'll just keep her name out of it. So we're going to go over to Belfast, and we're going to go over to the 2nd of September, 1973. And a young boy called Brian McDermott goes missing. And Brian was small for his age, and again we're seeing a pattern here again with Leslie Molseed. He was bullied because he was very little. He was the youngest of 5 children, and these are kids. The McDermott boys uh, and girls were always out and about in the street. They were from central Belfast,
Okay.
and one of his places he liked to visit was Ormeau Park. That is just down from the dock area, and through the centre of Ormeau Park is the River Lagan, which is the main feed, to the tidal estuary that goes into the docks in Belfast. And Brian had a little gang because he went to a local school. I did have the name of the school, but I don't know where that's gone. He went to a local school, but the kids that went to this school were the boys that resided in Kincora Children's Home, Boys' Home. And as we know, Kincora uh, rose to prominence, started about 8 years ago when they implemented the IICSA, the Independent Investigation to Child Sexual Abuse, which was a government-sponsored
Okay.
independent inquiry into care home abuse.
Okay.
And Northern Ireland had their own strain of it, and Northern Ireland it had a lot of findings because of quite a few homes. One was for Corbyn, one was Kincora, one was Protestant. Kincora was a Protestant home. Corbyn was a Catholic home, and there was a lot of espionage around there. So we're going to be going into very deep, dark political realms here.
It sounds it.
But this just fuels what we were saying in other ones that these kids are procured for very nefarious purposes, and it feeds this malevolence which goes into high office. We, we've got little Brian McDermott, 10 years old, on the 2nd of September. It's a Sunday, and he's out with his pals. His pals were from school, but his friends uh, were in a care home. They were subject to local authority care, and they resided in Kincora Boys' Home. And what we've got to look at is that Kincora over the ensuing years when Brian goes missing, five boys, five boys go missing, never to be seen again. Right? We've got Brian McDermott, Thomas Spence, John Rogers, David Leckie, and Jonathan Avon. All went missing. Right? Uh, Apart from Brian, all the others were residents at Kincora. And there was later to be 29 allegations of abuse, and some of them involved prominent political members, and also allegations of royalty.
Jesus.
Okay, and it then moves into the intervention of the intelligence services. The British Army Intelligence Corps was sent in with a special unit to look at what was going on, and it was later reported on about the abuse that was going on in Kincora, and also the missing Brian McDermott, and later the murder inquiry into Brian McDermott. So what we're going into now goes into deep, dark political realms. And like I've said,
Yeah.
not just on here, but on other investigations, that child abuse governs global politics.
100%.
And we're going to have proof of that here.
Yeah, it's
So,
shocking because of how real it gets and how much of it starts to sound like conspiracy, and I guess a little bit hopeful that it turns out to be a conspiracy, but it's not. It is fact. It is coming up as fact, and like I say, we're rolling out this case. So John, carry on.
right. So Brian is meant to go home for dinner at 1 p.m. and he never returns. He doesn't go home. His family then start getting worried because Brian is small for his age, like we mentioned. He's quite timid, and plus he's a very deep person. So he was quite a profound young man. The police get called in and they implement a missing person um, investigation into it. So a week goes by and nothing. And then the police and the British Army. So back then it was the RUC, the Royal Ulster Constabulary. They decide that they're going to take this seriously, and they lowered the river level on the River Lagan. Right, it's a big river, big tidal, fast-flowing river. This, and I don't know how they did it, but they some sort of engineering.
Okay.
They got
Okay.
in there and they managed to lower the level of the river. And as they did that, now whether they got intelligence, we don't know. That's not been disclosed. They find a Hessian sack, and the British Army dragged the sack out, and in it they find a body, but it's been mutilated. Right now,
To what
I'm
extent,
going.
John? Was it too badly decomposed to understand the full extent of it all?
Well, it's been in water now. Water is always a favoured way of disposing of a body, and water destroys DNA. Back then, DNA wasn't a thing, but water it mutilates a body more than anything else. The skin peels off, so a white person, their skin peels off, making them look black, so that the skin looks black.
Okay.
So a white body that's been in a river for a period of time will
Changes
go
color.
black.
Wow.
A black person, their skin goes white. Now, I've spent many years dragging out bodies from the River Thames with the River Police,
Okay.
and I've seen this firsthand. It bloats the body, and rivers, especially it's quite clean, and the tidal river, the salt has like a caustic effect on the body as well, and things tend to rot quicker in salt water. But it's also got a lot of parasites, and a lot of predators and scavengers,
Okay. Yeah, of
especially a
course.
tidal
Yeah.
river. So it's going to get eaten very quickly. Eels, crabs, shrimps. Shrimps are a big thing. They will infest that body straight away. Now, I don't know how to approach this bit. I'm not right. I'm going to approach it as keep it sterile, but then I'm going to chuck something into the mix.
All right. Okay, we're ready.
So the body's brought out and it's mutilated. The legs had been removed. They'd been cut off, butchered off, and one of the arms had been removed, and the body had also been subject to incineration, partial incineration. So it was charred, right? It was burnt. So we got a mutilated, burnt body, difficult to identify, of a young boy, approximately 10 years old. A fingerprint from the remaining the remaining arm is used to get print. Now, here's something I'm going to let you in on this. When a body is badly decomposed, especially when there's been put in water, right? This is how the police get fingerprints, because they can't just roll them out like you would
Okay. Yeah, of
on a
course.
living
Yeah. Yeah.
body,
Of course. Yeah.
right? You can do it in I've done it. I've gone to morgues and taken fingerprints, but not when they've been water damaged. When they've been water damaged, this is why I don't think the police get paid enough money. We had to take the skin off of that finger and put it onto our finger
Oh my God.
and then do the print. That's how we had to do it. Can you imagine
That's
being asked to do that and the
yeah.
corpse would be rotting at the same time?
That's pretty grim.
So that's how we would take fingerprints from a water damaged corpse. So they're a little bit of an insight there that
Yeah.
not a lot of people know. So they got a print of this young boy, and that was then compared with a print from his school book, and it came back that it was in fact Brian McDermott. Okay, so nothing else really goes on a policing level,
Okay.
right? Until 1976, when Brian's older brother William is accused of his murder. Right, William's got a bit of an anger management issue,
Okay.
and William um, is dragged in. He was a few years older than Brian. He's dragged in, and he's subject to to a lot of hours. I don't know exactly, but over a long period of time, he's in custody in 1976 in Belfast by the RUC. Now, policing was raw back then, but the RUC, they could sort of get away with things, and they weren't really that well governed, you know. So it was a bit
Yeah.
worse
Back
policing.
back back in what I commonly refer to as the golden era of crime.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
day and age.
There's a joke about the RUC. Why are they such bastards?
Okay. Okay.
And the answer is because they are UC.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah,
But
but you've
dad
got to
jokes
say
all
it.
round.
Yeah, you got to say it in the Belfast accent. They are UC. So that because they're anyway. So we're going to see a parallel here. His brother, after hours and hours of non-stop interrogation,
Okay.
admits to the murder of his brother. Right?
Okay.
And where did we see this with Stefan Kitschko,
Yeah,
with the
100%.
Leslie Mole seeds? Right? He later withdraws it and said it was coerced out of him by bullying from the RUC. So we're seeing the same thing. And his brother had a drink problem, and now what they were saying was that so Brian had hit his brother with a stick um, a few days before he went missing. So his brother, only a few years older than young Brian, decides to. I think they said that he pushed him out of a tree and accidentally killed him. But then he panics and decides to dismember his brother by cutting off both his legs, which takes some doing. I
Yeah,
mean, legs are hefty work.
it's
Um,
wild how they
you know,
think that these stories stick. It's like the kid
yeah,
getting
yeah,
on a train and going to London.
yeah, exactly. So they're saying that he then decides he panics, so he cuts his brother's both his legs off. Bear in mind the blood must have been unbelievable. Cut off one of his arms, then burn his body in a park where there was people about, and then put it in a Hessian sack, and then lug it all the way down to the fast flowing tidal river that the Lagan is, and
Yeah.
chuck it in, and then carry on life as normal. I mean, if you say, for example, as a young kid, you
Yeah.
got angry with your dog and you kicked it and it died, how long before you would fold under guilt
Well,
and
that's
say, look,
that's it. I mean,
you know,
that's it.
You would do, wouldn't you? But if you'd have killed your brother and then cut his legs off for some unknown reason, and then his arm, and then burn his body, and then put it in a Hessian sack, and then carry on normal life.
Yeah, that's what I'm
It,
saying. It's the aftermath of the action that would be noticeable in a child that age.
100%, and for the rest of their life, you know. And then again, he said, "Well, look, um, it, it, you know, it was coerced out of me," and we see this time and time and time again. Um, Now, at the time, there was three theories went up, right? One was that his brother had done it,
Okay.
which, okay, is that was very convenient if that was to happen. So
Okay.
that'd be case closed. Brother did it, you know, and that's that. We dealt with it, which is what they tried. The second one was a
Hope you're enjoying the podcast. There's a word from our sponsor, Shady Rays. Check them out. Gear up for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades and quick swap snow goggles that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that offers an unrivaled product that's just as good as any expensive pair we've worn. Durable frames and world-class optics for all outdoor adventures. And if you're into winter sports, the quick swap snow lenses move effortlessly between full sun to low light environments.
And these shades hide a multitude of sins since having the little man.
Shady Rays offers the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost or broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. Wear your Shady Rays with confidence because they have your back long after your purchase. If you don't love your Shady Rays, exchange for a new pair or return them for free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. The team always has your back with personal and fast support. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out an amazing deal for the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use code Sean, SHAUN, for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. Thanks for supporting our sponsor. Back to the podcast. Cheers.
Now, bear in
Okay.
mind the Kincora scandal that's going on, the 5 missing boys, the 29 allegations of abuse. That has got some weight, that one,
Of course.
okay? Um, and the last one was they had received information, the RUC, from various sources that Brian was abducted and murdered for witchcraft and satanic ritual purposes.
Damn,
And it was
it's
taken as the number one serious theory out of all three until the RUC went along with it and said, yeah, look, we could be dealing with a witchcraft murder. Until something strange happened.
okay.
All of a sudden, this special unit called the IVR or something like that, it was Northern Ireland Ulster based intelligence, British government sanctioned army intelligence unit
Okay.
came into play, and they took an interest in Brian McDermott's murder. And one of the leading captains, army captain and officer, was a guy called Colin Wallace. So he mentions about Brian McDermott,
Okay.
and he goes on to write a book. Can't remember what his book's called. It's called The Man Who Knew Too Much, right? And he was then sanctioned with going round with his team and setting up mock satanic ritual sites in and around Northern Ireland and the Donegal border. So they would go out, draw pentagrams everywhere. They would allegedly gather blood from cookhouses,
That's
pour it everywhere, and slaughter sheep and lay them out in various locations. He didn't know why. He said he didn't know what even SRA was, but they were told around the summer of 1973 to do this. They claimed that it stopped in the summer, but a leaked report showed it went on until the winter. So that would cover that period
Okay.
of Brian McDermott going missing, right? Now, two things here. Were they doing it to dismiss that SRA is a reality?
Okay.
Or were they trying to adulterate real live satanic sites and then make a joke of it all, because they were pouring animal blood everywhere, which would then, if there was human blood, it would totally mess that DNA or whatever it was for blood samples. It'd mess it all up, and it could
Yeah.
be smoke screening or whatever. It seemed very, very odd that they would do that, and he even claims he doesn't know why he was sent to do it, but they went out making up and defiling ritualistic sites all around Northern Ireland and the border. Now, something happened as well, was that Colin Wallace then made a complaint to the Home Secretary, and this is where it starts getting very, very dark, that what's going on in Kincora needs to stop, because there are political personnel going in and abusing young boys. And they weren't just abusing, they were going missing and they were getting murdered. Now, one guy, his name was Arthur Smith, he came forward for the independent inquiry, and he
Okay.
said that he had been raped on 2 occasions in Kincora because he was a resident there by Mountbatten. Lord Louis Mountbatten had raped him. Now, the FBI at the same time had put out a report that Mountbatten is a paedophile, right? And I think it was Edwina Curry had also called him a pedophile, which means a lover of boys, right? And Mountbatten, the FBI said that this man should never ever take an active role in decision making
Wow.
for the Royal Navy because he's abhorrent. Well, he was made chief of fleet or whatever it was.
Yeah.
At
But
the same time, circa that late 60s, early 70s, Jimmy Savile had been made an honorary admiral and was very close with Mountbatten, right? And they had a close friendship. So, and that was all.
suspicious ties once
Yeah,
again.
yeah. And also, what came out of a report about Kincora was the following people were linked to it: Ted Heath, Cyril Smith. Now, bear in mind, Cyril Smith was the one that caused problems about the investigation into Leslie Mulseed, and was the constituent MP when the family wanted something done about the unlawful stitch up of Stefan Kishko.
Yeah.
Cyril Smith. Ian Paisley was mentioned, and a loyalist leader called William McGrath was mentioned as all being involved in the abuse of young boys. Now,
Damn.
also, who was in charge a bit later on, politically for that area, was Leon Britton.
Okay.
And Leon Britton was also accused of having a sex for young boys, right? And he was in charge for political affairs over in that part of the world. And then, if we look, this gets even deeper, right?
Okay.
So, Colin Wallace is speaking out about this, right? About the satanic ritual stuff, about the sexual abuse of these boys. He mentions about the disappearance of young Brian McDermott. And bear in mind, the RUC had information that this was a ritualistic murder,
Yeah.
and then the intelligence services are then trying to dismiss any of that and detract it away from being ritualistic. Mountbatten is caught up in this, right? Ted Heath, Cyril Smith, William McGrath. Now, you imagine if it came out that this was going on, what would the Catholics have done? If there was witchcraft and Satanism within the British royal family within British politics and Northern Ireland politics, and the murder of young boys for that. Can you imagine the support that the IRA would have got,
Yeah, it would have been
and
outrage.
Catholic countries all
Yeah.
around the world would have been in uproar
Yeah, on
that
their
the
knees.
British government now, and then Colin Wallace is then stitched up and given a 10-year sentence for a murder he never committed. He was later, after 10 years in prison, exonerated. He was given a life sentence and he served 10 years, right? And he never did it, right? Now, all the whole lot was shut down. Now, who has the power to shut all this down when it's intelligence services? Well, of course, it's British intelligence. And who was head of British intelligence at that time? Sir Peter Hayman,
Okay.
who was a convicted pedophile. He got convicted of importuning young boys, and he was in charge of British intelligence, right?
It's shocking.
So,
It just seems like they're in every level, corner, and section of governing bodies and quite serious, specialist parts of the armed forces. It's mind blowing, John.
well, not only is it um, coercive of anyone involved, which is something the intelligence have always done. If that was just the sexual abuse of the boys, well, we've known from stuff we've done in the past. Well, some people aren't just satisfied with sexually abusing; it goes further. It's a bit like this obsession at the moment with bare knuckle fighting, and now it goes to an underground level in unlicensed fighting, and it goes where people aren't just there in the ring fighting; they're in warehouses where they're fighting with weapons. And I've even heard of bets being put on to literally last man standing, where the need for blood gets to a point where these men will fight till one dies. Now that's the same with snuff movies. They're not just satisfied with sexually abusing the child; they have to torture them, murder them, right? Because it's a perverted, hate-fueled lust. But then you get that, but also there is another reason, a religious, spiritually led reason, and that is what satanic ritual abuse is: the mutilation of children. Now, bear in mind what my contact, the author, said, that these boys, 10-year-olds, look into them carefully, because that is to fuel the satanic ritual, which is something we covered. Now, I'm going to take this further. A few years ago, when I started podcasting about ritualistic abuse, satanic ritual abuse, and I would always go on about the RAINS list, the Ritual Abuse Information Network Support list by Dr. Joan Coleman, that a leading psychotherapist at the Maudsley Hospital, who went on to write a list of names mentioned by patients who had been suffering from DID, dissociated identity disorder, and they would go on not just about child abuse but ritualistic abuse. And 2 or more names, if they cropped up from independent sources, she wrote them down, and this list has never been revoked or anything. It's still online, and it names people like Ted Heath, names that we mentioned here, and it
Yeah.
goes on about the reality, and it's come from a clinician
So how do they keep
from
dodging all
independent.
of this, John?
Say that again.
How do they keep dodging it? It seems like they just get away with it
Well,
endlessly.
I've given this list to the Commissioner of the Police. Robert Greene gave it to Theresa May. They all know the people on this list.
Yeah.
Now I started getting people come to me that had survived ritualistic abuse. Now, one woman came to me, and this is new, and this information is with the Garda police, the Garda Síochána, the Irish police, right? I've got
Okay.
this information because a statement was made and it was given to them. This comes from a person who is a survivor of ritualistic abuse, and states that in the early 70s, the parents were Satanists, and this person would be used
Okay.
for satanic rituals, which is usually the way those that come from intergeneration are kept alive, but that for the perverse reason of it, and they use them to actually commit the murders on the children.
Okay.
Children are procured whether from prostitutes within the coven or they're abducted.
Jesus.
And it's something we have covered many times in the
Yeah, we
past, and my
have.
podcasts have gone on about the dynamics
Yeah.
of this. And they are then used for deity worship, but also if someone needs something from the demon, so they might need a relationship to work, a relationship to break down, a promotion, a business deal, competition to be taken out, and the demons will reward them, but only if paid in blood. And they want clean blood, and it's virginal child blood. And like we mentioned,
Yeah.
young virgin girls, but before puberty, after puberty, it has no power. Before puberty, it has the power. So young boys need it, and we know that they will go for these latchkey kids, these itinerant
Yeah.
kids from trouble background, of which Brian was from there. You know, there have been issues with his family and all sorts. So, and they know by looking at these kids are out where they are, they get watched, and I've mentioned it in my videos. These satanic ranks called the Watchers and the Fixers,
Yeah.
of which Tony Savile was a fixer, and these Watchers are
100%.
lower down. They'll identify the kids, tell the fixer will get the kid and arrange it for a ritual, and it's all done for a lot of money. It's all money driven, right?
Of course.
This guy, anyway. So this person said that they were put in a room, a dark room, prior to the ritual, put white clothing on, and this person remembers a boy was brought in and put in the room next to them, and this young boy was scared. He was frightened. He'd been abducted. They'd stripped him to his underpants, and he'd wet his underpants. And this person said that this young boy had really skinny, knobbly knees, very skinny little boy, which Brian was. And they said that they were taken out onto the altar. This was in Northern Ireland, but in the southern part of it, either the county of Sligo or the county of Donegal.
Yeah.
So it was cross border, and as now different country, different jurisdiction, different rules, different everything, And this young boy was put onto a stage, an altar. A white-haired man comes in who does get named to me, but for today I'm going to leave that name out. But a prominent figure in British society with white hair, short, fat man, goes up behind the young boy and cuts his throat. The boy falls to the floor bleeding. They then, the person says that the blood then moves towards them and they get it on their white clothing. They then pick up the boy and they do something. They cut off his left arm. Right? Now, I
That's
would then
important.
take advice on this. Why would they cut off the left arm? The left arm is then held above the murderer's head, and the murderer, the Satanist, is wearing all the regalia, this whatever it might be, the gown. They wear gowns, and the whole of the um, crowd, which is about 13 of them, they then howl and start cheering. The I can't remember. They did tell me the deity worship. It might have been Kronos or one of these deities was worshipped, right? Um, and then the arm is held up. An orgy then takes place, which always happens. It's always an orgy.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I've got some exciting news to announce. Michael Francis is coming back to tour the UK in 2024. The Remade Man Tour, the Michael Franzese story. Michael Franzese, once named one of the 50 most significant mob bosses in the USA by Fortune magazine, and a former member of the notorious Colombo crime family, will take you deep into the world of organized crime, sharing captivating tales and insights into the mafia's past, present, and future. Join us for an unforgettable evening with Michael Franzese, the original Goodfella, as he exclusively sits down with myself, Sean Attwood. With me as the host, there's going to be a no-holes-barred exploration of Michael Franzese's life, including his numerous arrests and jury trials that ultimately led to his pleading guilty to a federal racketeering charge, a 10-year prison sentence, and $15 million in restitution. You will have the unique opportunity to ask questions during an audience Q&A session, making this event a must-see for true crime enthusiasts and anyone curious about the underworld. Don't miss this explosive in-conversation with Michael Franzese. Live on stage in the UK, this exclusive in-person event will be held in various locations in the UK, Ireland and Scotland. Link in the description box below this video if you want to grab yourself a ticket. Back to the podcast. Cheers.
That's the last thing. The venue gets cleaned up, and that's it. This person then says to me, I recognise the boy because later his face was put on, and they're pretty certain it was Brian McDermott. Now, bear in mind, Brian McDermott's body crops up 8 days later, and an arm is missing. Right, the body's been burnt. That might have been a ritualistic thing. We don't know whether they did that, but an arm is missing. And also, they said that someone bit the genital region off the boy. Now, if that's the truth, if that comes out in some document or whatever it might be, that there was genital mutilation of this young boy and the left arm was the one missing, there might be some substance in the claims that were made at the time that this was a witchcraft ritualistic murder.
Yeah.
And that the RUC did take it seriously, so it obviously come from a good source back then at the time, right? And then there may have been a need for the British intelligence services to cover that up because persons present might have been the same persons that were named in abuse within Kincora. Now, if that is the case, now I'm not saying Mountbatten was named in this. He may or may not have been.
Okay.
But saying Mountbatten was, and saying Ted Heath was, now there would be a massive need for the intelligence services to cover that up.
Of course.
Because can you imagine the Catholic countries knowing that a prime minister between 1774, Ted Heath, was a Satanist killing Protestant boys, and then a member of the royal family was involved. Now, Ted Heath has been accused of Satanism, and that came out in Operation Conifer, and that was aired live on TV by Chief Constable Wiltshire, Mr. Mike Bill. Now, has been accused by the FBI of being a prolific paedophile. So we're not too far away from potentially giving credence to the original allegation that this was a witchcraft murder.
I mean, we've got a witness testimony, and we've got, I mean, how many little kids with missing an arm are going to turn up within, that short a period of his disappearance? It's just, it's mind blowing, John.
Well, the other thing is that only a couple of years later, a young girl, 7-year-old girl, right, called Mary Boyle, is out playing in County Donegal on the border with Northern Ireland. She goes missing and is never seen again. Okay, now it was investigated by the Garda police, but the whole investigation was obstructed by politicians, and They didn't want certain people arrested. There were suspects named that political connections. They weren't allowed to be arrested, and it was just covered up uh, at, at a political level. Um, how bizarre is that?
It is
You know,
too
in
much coincidence.
the same time, the same time. Um, and very weird. So yeah, I could go more into the Mary Boyle thing, but again, the same location, the same area. I mean,
Yeah.
take the body across the border, total different jurisdiction, different legal system, everything else. Do what they got to do, bring it back, dump it in the river, and no one knows. So a boy is in fact then been trafficked across a border into another country, which is what we information came through from about snuff films, which the British police have always denied existed. Yet the Dutch
Yeah.
police have said we've seen snuff films made in Holland with British children.
Yeah. It's insane that is the denial and the official narrative to this day still, I do believe, for the British police.
But this info has gone. The police have got this. The Irish police have got this information and have had it from many years. Now, the people involved in this are probably all dead now. But it's weird how the army operation into all of this was called Operation Clockwork Orange. We had an army intelligence officer, which was used to discredit and cover up ritual abuse. He did know too much. He makes a point of mentioning Brian McDermott and the Kincora boys. He's then falsely accused of murder. We've got with the Kincora, with Brian's friends, we've got political leaders named Ted Heath, the Prime Minister, Cyril Smith, an MP,
Yeah. The
Ian
list is
Paisley,
massive. It really
William
is.
McGrath, loyalist leaders, and then Mountbatten,
Yeah.
all linked in this mess
Yeah.
that is the missing boys
Yeah.
of Kincora, which does take in that
And
Venn diagram,
you
young
know,
Brian McDermott.
John, it's almost like it doesn't get any better for the next era of politics because, a lot of us learned from the Savile documentary his connection with Thatcher, and we all know the extent of the crimes caused by many of her cabinet members, and met several with accusations against them.
Hmm.
It's never ending, right? So we can only assume that what is going on in the world today is by the same design.
Of course, and it's something that works and something that gets covered up. Now, this was different because this leaked because Northern Ireland is a very small place. Anyone who's ever been there and the atrocities that went on there, the war crimes that went on there, the persecution, the police corruption, the unlawful killings, there was so many operatives, surveillance jobs, police, special branch, the intelligence services working in a really small, low density of population area that there was always a risk that that bad practice and corrupt, I don't know, MOs would be exposed, which is what happened with Colin Wallace. He actually exposed it. Now, what is different to this than any other one that we've looked at was the fact that SRA was seen as one of the prime reasons that Brian McDermott look at what goes on in and around that allegation. The royal family, prime ministers,
Yeah.
stitch up as special branch officers, intelligence officers, political leaders,
Yeah.
missing boy after missing boy
Yeah.
after missing boy. Bang, 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 bang. 29 serious allegations of abuse, two of them involving a member of the royal family,
It's shocking.
all linked in. And it's just madness, pure bare madness.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. So, and Brian McDermott's case is still open ended. I, for one, don't believe his brother did it. His brother
No.
went on to live quite a dysfunctional life. He became an alcoholic.
Of
He
course.
changed his name. he made, and it could be that the McDermott boys were all abused. There might have been stuff going on within their
Yeah.
family. I don't know. I don't know them. I don't know what's going on.
You never know, really.
But he
It's
went on to not function very well in life. And he was stitched up with his own brother's murder. Now, I don't for 1 minute think he did it.
yeah. Well, it follows
Not
the MO that's so prevalent through so many of these cases, especially when it involves political parties, royal families, heavy hitters in this club, shall we say. It never fails to shock, and this case in particular is incredibly sad because it's unsolved. You've been in contact with credible witnesses, and it's looking very much like the horror story is the reality for this little boy.
well. If we were to look at this commonsensically and just say, right, well, what we got a young boy, 10-year-old boy, goes missing. His body is found mutilated, in the most sadistic fashion, in a Hessian sack, tied up and thrown into a river.
Yeah,
So suspects are, if this was a game of Cluedo, suspects are his teenage brother who got the hump with him because he hit him with a stick,
yeah,
and then decides to mutilate his body, butcher it, burn it, Hessian sack it, dump it in the river, get on with life. Or we could have one of the most appalling
yeah,
PR rings that ever came out of British soil, involving proper allegations. We're not
yeah.
talking nutcases here.
And we're not even
We're
talking as
talking,
if it's over.
yeah,
It still exists.
yeah, we're talking corroborated government inquiry, allegations, and investigations into a member of the royal family, our British Prime Minister, cabinet ministers, loyalist leaders, um, numerous sexual abuse and the R words against children, young boys in there,
Yeah,
and then on top of that, we've got, and the fact that the FBI took an interest in this as well, and they corroborated about the member of the royal family, saying this is a man that has a lust for children. On top of that, we've got the inquiry that went in about Ted Heath,
yeah,
and also that went in about William McGrath, the loyalist leader. I think he might have been in prison for abuse. I'm not too sure. Cyril
yeah.
Smith, who was definitely
Oh,
a paedophile.
100%.
All linked in. 5 boys go missing,
Yeah,
believed murdered, from the same home, the same area at the same time. And then we get information that this one of Brian is ritualistic, and then information is received that a young boy matching Brian's description was taken over the border
yeah,
into a neighbouring county and was mutilated with his left arm cut off, and then that was it. So, I mean, that seems, and that's all interlinked with
yeah.
the pedo thing and the witchcraft thing. As far as I'm concerned, it's all interlinked. Um, that makes sense, but to stitch his brother up and thinking that a teenage boy did that and then
Yeah.
got on with his life, it don't make
It
sense.
doesn't make sense, but it's how it's packaged and the way that people just consume the lies. And as we've seen so often, lies become history. It's a
Yeah,
horrible. It's a horrible case, John. It really,
and
really
and
is.
and if we look at the Moira Anderson case, that the original senior investigating officer turned around and says, "I still think it was this crazy loner that lived down the road." Still maintained it was him. And if that we then go back to the Leslie Mulseed with the corrupt senior officer who went on to screw up the civil
Yeah,
inquiry,
yeah, exactly.
continued to blame Stefan Kitschko, who was exonerated. We're seeing the same thing
Yeah,
time and time again, exactly the same pattern.
yeah, it's horrible. Well, again, it's one of these stories that just continues to paint the bigger picture, John. And like I say, we're still working behind the scenes on this. This case in particular is one that has affected me. I'm not going to lie because of how close we are to this.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's but there was a need to cover this up. It makes sense.
Of course
there's a
there
need to
was.
cover this up, and I don't think it's a good thing they did, but it's a sense because that was fragile out there, and it was bad times, and there was a lot of bad publicity on the British government for their heavy-handed approach with the bloody Sunday massacre and all sorts of things, and the Americans back in the IRA and the strength that the Catholic Church had around the world, and it was all to be so fragile in respect to the British government if any of this ever got out, and there was a need to cover this up.
The monarchy, shall we say?
The monarchy, and as we found, it's at the time. Oh no, that Mountbatten was seen as being this this quirky individual. Oh, what a jolly funny chap, but the FBI said this man should be nowhere near children and nowhere near decision making. He's not right in the head, and he's a pedophile. And the cabinet ministers called him a pedophile. And Ted Heath, how disgraceful was that man? Cyril Smith, I mean, and they were all there, all interlinked with this whole filth that went on.
Yeah.
So this is a phenomenal case to look into. The case of Brian McDermott is still unsolved. It gets reviewed every year.
Yeah.
The police, the PSNI, review it every year. It's due to be reviewed before the year is out.
Well, let's hope we get some balls
Let's
rolling.
Let's hope. Yeah, the PSNI link in, and as if they don't link into each other, of course they do. Link in with the Garda. Look at this statement done by our source, and deal with it appropriately.
Get some results,
and
yeah.
Maybe exonerate for good William McDermott, who changed his name. But it's really, really interesting one, this, and it's one I think watch this space because this could be forever evolving this case.
100%. We'll keep you all updated, and thank you very much, John, for tonight. We're going to be changing the night that we're recording on a little bit because we're becoming pressed for time on a Wednesday, and we'd like to sort of not feel that pressure, if that makes sense. So,
can I just say one thing?
Of
and
course.
I forgot to mention it.
Of course.
And it's why the left arm. And I did allude to it, but I didn't mention that. Now, the left arm, the left side of the body is important in Satanism because the Latin word for left is sinister. And that's where the demons come into the body on the left side. So in Islam, the young virgin girls are told to lay on their left side to stop the jinns getting into their body. So the left is seen as the devil's side. So that's why the left would always be attacked in victims of Satanism, because it's the sinister side, and that is the even word for sinister. And also, in a ritual, there's a need for the elements to be used. So fire and water are used in rituals.
Interesting.
So that might be the reason why Brian's body was burnt and then it was subjected to water.
Submerged.
Because the element, the gods of the elements are also venerated. But there you have it.
It's shocking, and it gets more and more deep every week. We're like I say, we're going to keep you guys updated. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. And John, thank you as always for giving up your time. And until next week, everybody, from me as always, make sure you're subscribed, make sure you leave a like, make sure you share. And from me, Ron Swanson, as always, be safe out there.